Howdy, everyone. Laura Sawinski here, Group Editor for CropLife Media Group with our casual CropLife Convos. And I'm talking with Galynn Beer, National Sales Manager at AgroLiquid. Galynn and I sat down earlier this year in April, and one of the topics that we were talking about was a trend whereby some of the growers were delaying input decisions due to some market forces that they were concerned about. And we agreed back then that we would revisit the topic in the fall and kind of see how that's panning out. So here we are in the fall. And Galynn, what's the scoop? What are you seeing? How is this playing out in the market?
Yeah, so Laura, you're exactly right. I had concerns in the spring, and I think part of that concern was the sort of retrenchment or retracement of commodity grain prices that we were seeing at that time.
Right.
And I will say that as we actually got into spring, is that sometimes farmers focus a little less on that and they focus more on what do I need to do to grow a good crop. And they did shift their focus. And
Mhm.
by and large, I think farmers still made sound fertilizer decisions. They didn't make the random cuts that I feared, like throwing zinc out or sulfur out. By and large, they still made those commitments.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
do I do think that time since then, guys are still evaluating those decisions in hindsight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of good to hear. Just to recap, like what were some of the challenges? What were the biggest things they were concerned about? I know, you know, the
Yeah.
financial side, interest rates and stuff were a concern. Was that
Yeah.
still part
Yep.
of it, or were there some other things they were
Yeah.
worried
I
about?
mean, farmers did delay that decision partly not to start the interest clock.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of in a weird fertilizer market where you really couldn't make a case that there were going to be supply chain issues. Like by the time you and I talked, the supply chain had sort of filled up. So I think growers were confident they were going to get their supplies. So
Mm-hmm.
they just continued to set on their hands there. But the other reason they delayed was they were trying to wait for the markets to shake out a little bit. The profit they could pencil in at that time was pretty tight. So I think they just wanted to wait as long as they can for that last evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now that we're kind of moving into, harvest and post-harvest, if you will, what, where's the market now? And what are you kind of hearing?
Well, since our conversation, the spring corn prices have actually declined quite a lot.
Yeah.
I would say we've lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.30 a bushel. So those
Mm-hmm.
budgets that were tight look a little bit worse now. Now, that being said, I think if you look at all out there, I know when I make statements like this, I'm going to get a comment from a grower somewhere. Well, you should see my beans or my corn. It looks horrible. But by and large, across the country, farmers have excellent looking crops. And what you deal with in the spring when a guy's looking at tight economics, he doesn't know what his yield picture looks like. Now, I think farmers can at least look at it and go, the price isn't as good, but my yield picture looks fantastic. So there is a little bit of an offset there.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned something, and again, since we spoke last April, we've had our Tech Hub Live conference in Des Moines, which obviously, all about ag tech and such. And one of the things I did want to ask you about is farmers utilizing yield maps and
Mhm.
other ag tools. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So this is a time of year that guys will start gathering that yield data
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how their yields were. And again, the early returns I have so far are the yields have been really good.
Good,
By
great.
and large, doesn't apply to everybody, so I feel bad for the guy that got stuck with the rain always running around him, and I know that always happens, but by and large the yields are good. But I will tell you this, that yield map becomes valuable in these situations because now you can go back to the areas of low yield and you can kind of start revisiting those. You can go soil test those specific areas and say, do I need to invest more in that area? Should I just let that area be a low yielding area? They can use that for sort of a roadmap for going and collecting some soil and sending that off.
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, kind of leads to the next question. As farmers, kind of move through the season here and looking ahead even to 2025, what strategies are they thinking about now for next year? What are they setting up for? What are they looking at?
I do think, Laura, what you're going to see in the upcoming year a little bit is where high yield has kind of been the driver on everything. I
Mm-hmm.
th- they're well, from a nutrient standpoint, sometimes there's diminishing returns at the top. And I think we might have talked about this earlier.
Yep.
Maybe at the bottom you get a bushel of corn out of 7/10 of a pound of nitrogen, and at the top maybe you only get 7/10 of a bushel out of a pound of nitrogen. Like, that's how the diminishing returns. And I think farmers are going to use those yield maps and maybe some other resources to really evaluate where diminishing returns kicks in, because I think they're going to have to do that to maybe orient themselves towards profit per acre as opposed to revenue per acre this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. And anything else to add? That you're seeing
I
next year
it,
advice and
Yeah, I think for growers, I mean, I'm a fertilizer guy, so I can see, that the grower that's listening to this thinks the last person I want to go to for advice is a fertilizer guy. But I do hope that there are enough people out there in the industry that they can trust that they'll go to for advice, because even though at AgroLiquid we sell fertilizer, we train our guys and stress that we need to help these guys maximize that ROI on that fertilizer dollar. And so it doesn't make sense for us to oversell someone in 1 year and them not be our customer 5 years out. So I hope that they will have enough faith, because if you go to someone like us, we live and breathe fertilizer every day. We're the best equipped to find that diminishing returns point for those growers out there, even though it might be uncomfortable to let a fertilizer salesman do that for you.
yeah, yeah. Well, that kind of leads to the next thing. We're meeting here at the beginning of September, and you guys had a announcement that came out that wanted to ask you about, and it kind of pertains to relationships and collaboration in the industry and some real world trials. Do you want to explain about that? What's the scoop there?
Okay, and I assume you're referring to our CTEC approval at TFI.
Yeah.
And so I think, Laura, yes, that's a big plus. The micro usage and the microbial benefits are still a little elusive on a broad acre basis. You see a benefit here, not over here. And I think that approval for us means that at least we've gone under one other microscope. Someone looked at what we did, the trials we conducted, and they said, you're going about it correctly. Do challenges lie ahead in still finding that accuracy on a grower's farm? Yes, but I do hope that if nothing else, the grower can look at our approval of CTEC and see that we are trying to take steps to make sure we're approaching that segment of the market in the right way.
Sounds great. Well, that's good. It's nice to see. It's always exciting, these developments. I'm never a dull moment when
Well, it's I mean, I've watched microbes for 50 years, and I still consider it an emerging part of the industry, because you answer one question with microbes, you probably open the door to 10 others. But we are committed to it, and that's what we're trying to demonstrate with CTEC.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Galynn, for stopping by. We're gonna have to reconnect again so we could see if what you're talking about in 2025 comes about.
I know. I mean, look, I work in ag. There's going to be challenges every year, and I see 2025 the same way. But it's an industry that's fun to be in, and we're happy to go meet those challenges. And I appreciate you having me on for this discussion. You're welcome to reach out anytime.
Will do. Thank you, Galynn, so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.